covers all things college football. Bill, always a pleasure. We always appreciate your time. What's up, my man?
Hey, not much. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing really well. We've got it's kind of a weird Thursday in the state of Mississippi because Southern Miss doesn't play again until next Tuesday night. Ole Miss has got their open date. Mississippi State's got its open date, and so instead of being one of those Thursdays where it feels like it's almost here and it's just tingling, it's like, what do we do this weekend? What's on? Is there some good football to watch? And I think there is.
Yeah, I mean, you got Oregon, Washington out west, top 10 matchups, going to have a lot of implications there. You got USC and Notre Dame, late night, prime time, SEC-wise. I mean, Alabama just keeps finding a way, and they play Arkansas. And, so there's always a reason. We've reached the midpoint of the season, and as I pointed out this week at SN, there's 29 Power 5 teams with one loss or less, and those are kind of the 29 teams that are still in the Derby, so to speak.
Yeah, and so much is going to happen starting this weekend. So let's start with the Pac-12. That Oregon-Washington game is so sexy. I mean, I haven't checked the weather. I'm just going to assume that it's going to be sunny and beautiful at Husky Stadium on Saturday because it's one of the great settings for all of college football. And now we've got two of the best quarterbacks facing off against each other, two prolific offenses. I mean, hopefully this one lives up to the hype because we're talking true heavyweight fight here, right?
Yeah, I mean, the nation's two top statistical offenses. That means there's going to be a bunch of points. There's going to be a bunch of yards. On Washington's end, you've got the nation's leading pass offense. You've got a quarterback who's been as efficient as anybody, odds-on Heisman favorite. 3 receivers average 15 yards or more. And then on Oregon's side, you got 3 running backs that have 7 yards or more. I think there are going to be a ton of points. I think there's going to be a ton of offense. And both the winner of that game, Richard, I think will be headed to the Pac-12 championship because it's such a all-in game for both teams.
Bill, when would you think the last time is or was, Colorado notwithstanding, that a get-in-the-door ticket cost $145 in the Pac-12?
That's a great question. And it's a nod to what they're doing this year. I mean, they do have, I mentioned that 29 teams with one loss or less in the Power 5. But the Pac-12 has 7 of them. Pac-12 has the most ranked teams. Pac-12 has the best quarterback play. And I say all that, and the Pac-12 could be the conference that misses out on the playoffs. Because if Oklahoma goes undefeated and Florida State goes undefeated, and the SEC champion you pencil in, one of those 3 big-time schools out of the Big Ten East, they're going. So I think it just puts a tremendous amount of pressure for all these teams to win every game.
Yeah, it really does, and it would be a shame. I mean, look, I have not shed many tears for the Pac-12. I think it's sad that it's going away, but I think so much of that is their own doing. But if we're just talking about from a football standpoint, the league is really good top to bottom this year, and what a season this would be, Bill, if we didn't have a 4-team playoff, but we had a 12-team playoff.
But I have mixed feelings about that because that's what these games are for. That's why, what's Oregon-Washington if there isn't consequences? And there are. And next week, I know the anticipation around here is already, they got to take care of business this week, but the anticipation for Penn State, Ohio State's pretty high around here. And, but to me, it's you can only have those games, and you have to have some consequences. Otherwise, and I'm an NFL guy too. Otherwise, it kind of feels like Ravens Steelers or Packers Lions because they're going to eventually play again.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but do you think there would be less juice surrounding Oregon and Washington if it was like, okay, if they play a great game and the team that loses that game could say, but we're not completely dead yet? I don't know if that takes juice away from it.
I agree to an extent. I guess maybe I'm looking at it from, and I'd be the first to admit, I'm in the Central Ohio bubble where it's Ohio State, and I think in that next format, it'll be an assumption, at least now, that Ohio State would probably make the playoff most years.
Right.
But you just never know. I mean, that's why these games have to be played. I mean, that's why Penn State has never made the 14 playoff, but if we were in a 12-team format, they would be a regular. Michigan, I think we're going to look at teams differently, even down your way. Like, Ole Miss would probably have a couple playoff appearances, and that loss to Alabama earlier this season would hurt, but maybe not as much.
Yeah, Ole Miss would have been in a 12-team format. We've played with the numbers. They would have been in twice, and they would have been like perilously close a third time. If you kind of go back and you look at the 4-team playoff window. I want to ask you about a team that you mentioned a second ago, and that's Michigan, because I feel like they're kind of ho-hum going about their business because of the schedule they've played, but their margins of victory are 27, 28, 25, 24. Oh, wait, there's a 38, there's a 42. It just feels like a well-oiled machine right now.
This is his best team. And I don't know if that means they'll actually break through and win a national championship or if they're good enough to beat Georgia yet because, like you said, they really haven't played great competition yet. But it's the way they're doing it. And they're playing offense at the slowest tempo in the sport, and they're still beating teams by like 37 points per game. It's their best defense. It's the most NFL talent he's had on the roster. It's his best quarterback. And they still have to go through Penn State and Ohio State and Michigan State next week. But, I mean, I've followed that program obviously pretty close over the years, and this is his best team.
Yeah, and a pretty good coaching job, at least when he's been there. Because doesn't it say something when you have a team that hasn't really been tested and yet they still play at a pretty high level and play pretty clean football week in and week out?
Yeah, they're the least penalized team in the country, too. So, I mean, those things that we question about Alabama, like Alabama has strung together some wins and bounced back from the Texas loss, but penalties are still there. Defensive breakdowns are there. I mean, they did win last week, but Georgia has had 2 double-digit deficits in the first half. So, yeah, I think there's something to be said about going about your business and winning every game, but, Penn State's better. Ohio State's good. Those 3 games are going to be, I mean, you hate to skip so many steps and just make it about those 3 games, but those 3 games are as big as it's going to get around here in the Midwest.
Bill, if you bring it back to the SEC, there are 2 games this weekend that I think are really, really fascinating, and they don't include Alabama or Georgia. Alabama's playing Arkansas. Georgia's got Vanderbilt. So it's not those 2. It's the game in Knoxville with A&M and Tennessee. Because if A&M doesn't win this weekend, I really question what their buy-in factor is going to be the rest of the way.
Yep, and they've lost. They played well last week. They didn't they made a couple mistakes and it didn't work out. But huge game for them, huge. And I'm glad you brought it up because I think Tennessee's going to beat them. I think Tennessee at home with that running game off a bye week, the energy, and then it sets up what could be a really good game when they play Alabama the following week. So, I think for A&M, what is the buy-in factor for the rest of the season? The next time I speak with you, are we talking about the Jimbo Fisher buyout and job security and Bobby Petrino and all these things that were supposed to fix the problem? But at the end of the day, it comes down to wins and losses, and they've been close, but that Miami game was a pretty flagrant loss on top of what's happened since.
And Bill, the other one that stands out to me, and I get that nationally Missouri at Kentucky's not doing much for a lot of people, but both of these teams are 5-1. They're both coming off a loss last week. The winner of this game really is going to be in a spot where they could be looking at a 10-win regular season, and the loser could kind of see it go the other way. I think it's really big.
Oh, and contrast in styles. Mizzou lost last week. Mizzou lost last week, but they threw around the yard, and they've got a prolific offense, and Luther Burden's about as good a receiver as you're going to find in the country. Kentucky, I just think they caught Georgia on the wrong week. I think they caught Georgia on a week where Kirby was able to hone in on kind of the narrative that they're not quite as good as they normally are. And then, like you said, the winner probably got a good chance to go to a New Year's Day Six Bowl, which would be a huge carrot for those programs. Like, nobody thought Missouri was going to go to the New Year's Day Six before the season. Kentucky a little bit closer, obviously. But, today I'm intrigued by it. I had a hard – it's funny, you mentioned those 2 games. The Kentucky-Missouri game in particular, when I did my picks this week, that was probably the hardest one to pick.
Yeah, I get that. The Kentucky road is more difficult the rest of the way. If Missouri can win this game at Kentucky, they still got Georgia. I don't know. I don't know if either of these teams get to 10 wins. upon further review, but still in a pretty good spot. Bill, our time's always too short. Love the job that you do covering college football. Appreciate it very much and appreciate your time.
Hey, no problem. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for having me on. You guys be good.
Bill Bender from the Sporting News joining us on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team, Mississippi.